Hey, well, good evening and welcome to the City of Lake Forest Park joint meeting with the Shoreline School Board for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. With that, I will call the meeting to order. And maybe we can go around the room and make some real brief introductions, starting with Superintendent Reyes.
Hi everyone, my name is Susana Reyes and I am the proud superintendent of the Shoreline School District. We serve children from the City of Lake Forest Park and the City of Shoreline. Thank you for having us.
I'm Sarah Cohen. I'm the school district director from District 3, and I appreciate being here as well. Thank you for having us.
Hi everyone, I'm Sylvia Keel. I'm the school district director for District 4. Happy to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Betnell. I'm the director for District 5, which does cover parts of Lake Forest Park. And I'm the one school board director who does reside in Lake Forest Park. So thank you for your service to my family and our community. And I currently serve as our
Tom French, the mayor, and I was on council for 12 years before.
My name's Tracy Bertoni. I'm the deputy mayor, and I've been on council for 4 years now.
Summer Riddle. I have been on council for about 9 years now.
I'm John Lewa, and I'm an alum of the Shoreline School District of Lake Forest Park, Kellogg, the old Kellogg. And the rest of my boys all come through Shoreline.
Hi, I'm Larry Goldman, city council.
I'm Ellen Saunders, and I've been on council for almost a year and a half now. And my twins graduated, went all the way through the school. Side, Shoreline, Kellogg, and then Shorecrest. So,
I'm Polly Good, and I've been on council the same time as Ellen, about a year and a half.
Right, well,
and
welcome.
we just had a student representative join us.
Please.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm the junior student board rep at Shoreline.
Where John and I both went. We also both, as he indicated, went to the old Kellogg too. So, did you go to Brookside?
Lake Forest Park.
Lake Forest Park. I was at Brookside.
Oh, there's the rivalry.
Yeah. Cross mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really just
Well-
cross ballot.
Literally, yes. Well, thanks for everybody for coming, and appreciate y'all taking the time to get together. I know everybody's really busy at this moment, particularly in the world, and we have a fairly limited amount of time. I apologize for that, but we can certainly do this again very, very, very shortly. And we have a couple items on the agenda, and I did want to talk about the goals for the meeting. I know that had you interfaced with Administrator Bill on some of the various topics, or would you like to talk to just about the goals for the meeting and go from there?
I mean, I think the goals for the meeting are first to develop a stronger relationship between the school district and the city council. Clearly, we have some common interests, and I think the agenda reflects the fact that these are several of the topics that are at the intersection of our two purveys. So I think we're not looking for anything particularly, like an interlocal agreement or anything out of this, but we are looking to basically understand each other's position on these. So, and as the mayor said, we'll have actually more time to discuss if we need to do anything further more formally.
Yeah.
And if I may,
Absolutely.
our entities co-developed this agenda together.
Yeah.
So we had a pre-meet where we were able to determine what would be the best use of our time, where we could really discuss items where we overlap.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, primarily here, I mean, if we dive right in, school traffic safety, that's top of mind for everybody. This council and previous councils, under now 3 different deputy mayors in terms of time frame, have worked very hard to ensure that the city of Lake Forest Park is moving resources moving forward with as much as we possibly can to make things safer around the school zones. We did implement the 178 traffic camera system last year through some fits and starts. You may not be aware that the legislature authorized certain things and then they changed certain things last year, and it gave us some hiccups. But the good news right now is the success is absolutely overwhelming. We don't look at the revenue numbers from a success standpoint, we look at the speed numbers. And it has gone from an average speed of over 31 miles an hour in the corridor down to 23.25 basically. And it continues to be something that the residents and people who drive through there, including people from North City comment about. And so that's the success metric that we were looking for was we'd love to see the revenue zero, honestly. But if they're not zero, under state statute, those revenues have to go towards pedestrian multimodal safety with a primary focus around the areas in which the revenues are generated. Having said that, our safe street study from 2017, which is getting a little longer to kind of like me, it is the top two priorities are pedestrian multimodal safety near Brookside Elementary and Lake Forest Park Elementary. And those two projects will be the first that will get engineering to. And the intent is not to fully fund those projects out of those revenues, but to get them through 10% engineering so we can apply for Safe Routes to School grants. So we've been successful before at Brookside. And similarly, so interestingly enough, those are both on 37 at Lake Forest Park and 37th on at Brookside. So
What does
I'm
that mean? So it's about 37.
they're both the roads are 37.
Oh.
Yeah,
the literal
yeah,
road
the
is
actual
37.
names of the roads are 37.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's strange because you wouldn't think of that, but they actually both are 37. And so there's going to be additional interim kinds of measures that will be taken, particularly near Lake Forest Park and on 178 near Brookside. One of the priorities that have been identified is trying to get some pedestrian multimodal safety near 178 and along that walking and biking corridor. So we're working on some interim temporary measures. We do have the Pack the Park coming up. So as part of pedestrian multimodal safety, we've been talking as a council has been talking about and the administration has been talking about changes to Perkins, and Perkins will be closed for Pack the Park Run. So you'll get to test drive it if you like to, which is a wonderful place to walk and bike and enjoy. School zone cameras too will be expanded at some point. We just received some studies from our transportation engineering team that we contract with. That will be brought to council here in the coming weeks, actually, and the 19th, I believe, depending on whether everything is finalized. And then proposals will be made to the council about how to expand the safety camera program. On topic, let me pause for a second before I talk everybody to death here. Are there any questions about what I've shared with you?
What analysis have you done pre-post with the cameras around LRP? So sharing about the Brookside cameras and understand that that's been a more recent implementation. Do you have similar information or?
Well, we haven't changed the cameras at all. They've been static for the same installation for a period of time. My fervent belief is that they need to be expanded as Brooksides have. The difference is the volume.
Expanded meaning like the 24/7?
24/7, because there are people walking around that neighborhood, both 37th, 35th, and through the adjoining neighborhoods, all hours of the day, particularly children. I run by there sometimes, and there's some challenging places around there, and people need to slow down. The reality is WashDOT is going to do their culvert project coming up in about 6 weeks at Ballinger Way, and there's going to be diversion of traffic around to 195th off of Ballinger Way and then down 35th. So that's going to put pressure on that school zone area there. Potentially there will be spillover to 40th Place as well, because people try to wend their way around there. The police department is going to have staff practically 24/7 manning the detour to make sure that people are safe. We're somewhat at the mercy of WashDOT's planning and their lack of staffing, unfortunately. But there are also going to be road closures nearby there where it's going to be neighborhood only access. So particularly 190th. Is that right? We're conflating the two roads, everyone. The big road is at the intersection is 195th and 190th. Anyway, the light from the periphery of Lake Forest Park, intersection of Shoreline, is where they're going to reroute traffic down that major road. But they're going to have traffic calming measures that they're going to place. Primarily, it's going to be on WashDOT's to take the lead on that, but we're going to be pitching it. I would like to also see us expand the 40th traffic camera program as well, because that's another area where people come from the far north end, Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, and they wend their way through and then get to where we're going to be putting our roundabout in next year. And it's a very unsafe area sometimes at particularly rush hour morning and evening. So getting those speeds down is essential. You may have noticed we've lowered our speed limits. The council was very, very supportive of getting speed limits lowered, and a real holistic approach to speed limits across the community. So some of the old legacy roads, which were formerly King County roads, were 30, they're now down to 25, and that's already had an impact on the speeds. I think there was anything else. The roundabout's going in next year too, so that's going to have an impact on Lake Forest Park in terms of pedestrian safety. The last thing I will say is speed cameras. The authorization was allowed under state statute as of last year to put in speed cameras on state routes. The recommendation in the draft speed study that came back from our transportation engineering consulting firm is that a speed camera will be placed in front of Lake Forest Park Elementary to slow traffic down. So I think it's a very positive. And again, those revenues have to go right into a specific, to a specific set of programs for helping enhance people's.
Was that along Ballinger?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Some
there
of
isn't one on Ballinger now, right? It's on the side
No.
streets coming in, right?
The reality is that the speed limit was on Ballinger was 30 miles, it was 25 miles an hour when you were there. And then WashDOT decided they wanted to move more cars faster and they raised it to 30. And so the reality for us, it has been, and we've been advocating for a lower speed limit. That's the other thing that we hope to achieve here, to get it back down to 25 around very dangerous area here in the school. A lot to digest, please.
I was wondering in terms of traffic safety specific to schools and the, use of those, the elementary school communities. Do we have any analysis on the, current transportation patterns of students who's, how they're getting there, how they're who's walking, and are these measures likely to increase, is it going to provide, say, enough of a safe route that will be sufficient, for students or families to change, who are currently driving to start walking? Do we know, about the entirety of the route that people would be likely to take and how these changes might, increase the ability of people to walk to school and therefore take advantage of the safer traffic?
That's an excellent question. The challenge we've had is, and to answer your question, despite the fact that Lake Forest Park is very small, we just simply have not had the resources to look to attack it holistically. We have, the first new sidewalk in Lake Forest Park in 30 years was on 522 in 2015. And so now with the, the fortunate or unfortunate outcome of the 2 traffic cameras that were installed on 178, there will be some revenue to apply to looking at things like this, because it has to be systemic. And the science and the data shows WashDOT is finally going to that place where at least the newer members of leadership in WashDOT are going to a place of considering what the routes are, how to encourage people to get people out of the cars, doing road diets. You may or may not know the council passed what's called the NACTO city limits guidelines. We were the first people in the country to adopt that as a standard, which approaches setting of speed limits and pedestrian multimodal safety by looking at the roads under a whole series of criteria rather than looking at how many cars you're moving and how fast they're going. Looking at driveways, sight lines, trees, sidewalks, visibility, width. That's another consideration. So I would hope that we would be able to find ways to create very safe routes to school, so we could do walking buses, so we could do additional crosswalks so that people feel safe. One of the things there's been a study that's done for crosswalk on northern Ballinger up by the condominiums up there, the apartments up there. Fervent need, I mean, urgent need for
I
that.
mean, Bellinger homes are all the way up by the Quinn.
No, not by the Quinn, so that's in Shoreline, but south of there, down by Woodland, Woodlands.
Okay.
Yeah, so right there, there's also an opportunity. We also actually it was at the urging of Councilmember Saunders in our last go around with our retreat to look at a 40th that 40th crosswalk, yeah. Sometimes like late 40th and 40th place, that study has been done. And as a byproduct of that,
Can you help us geolocate for you?
sure, so if you go, if you're coming
178.
by the church, yeah, coming 178th going towards Ballinger, it's on the left-hand side, just past the church. So there's kind of a big T right near the Lake Forest Park Water District. And there's also enough width on that road to do pedestrian and biking lanes too, and that's the lower hanging fruit that we're working on. Just discussed that again yesterday. We're hoping to be able to do that in a matter of months rather than a matter of, because it's very low cost. So additional crosswalks have to happen. And the other thing is getting across Ballinger is a very, very scary proposition if you're not either at 175th, 170th and 35th. Those are the two crossings for almost a mile. And we have to have a crossing at 178th. And of course, at the roundabout, there'll be pedestrian islands and crossing that will help protect them.
Thank you.
Building on Director Cohen's question, there may be a potential collaboration. You can talk with the superintendent about staff capacity for this. Because we have a bit easier access to reach out to the families and
Wonderful.
students of those two schools to ask indeed that question. Like, so in the school district, if you live within a mile of the school, bus transportation is not provided unless you have disabilities that require transportation assistance. So that's, as you're thinking about planning, that 1 mile radius around each of those schools is a good area to keep in mind, that families living there are then making that choice that Director Cohen is talking about. And I can think about, so one of our children went to Brookside, so really, really familiar and around Brookside.
Yeah.
The hill going up towards Octavia Butler Avenue.
37.
Thank you. Oh, I should have remembered that from before. It's both 37.
That's where the sidewalk is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like sidewalk ends and then it's a bit of a blind and kind of fast hill.
Narrow and-
Until we hit the camera, then everybody slows down. So yeah, definitely a spot that should be a place where I could imagine there'd be more walking if there was more physical infrastructure to support that.
Let me come back to the data for a second on the traffic cameras. I'm not boring you with details on the data geek, but on 35th and 40th place, the data in the school zone with the school zone cameras there right now, of course, limited hours during school hours. The numbers there are much lower, like gosh, I think they're maybe a quarter of what they were on 178. And one of the reasons why the administration and the council moved so quickly to try to work on something on 178 was because of the huge volumes of traffic that we're seeing, the North City development, light rail and various things coming online. And so I believe that we're going to see increases in traffic on 35th. We're already seeing on 40th because of the development in Mount Lake Terrace and expansions of the commercial areas out there. So I think it's imperative that we find ways to put additional crosswalks in, traffic calming, safe places like sidewalks and grade separated kinds of situations, so that people are, I say grade separated, that's probably not the right term, but extruded curves in the shorter order, but longer term, trying to build out the routes as you were saying, Director Cohen.
I think there's just so many challenges to get across so many of our larger, they're not large, some cities compared, but our larger city or our larger streets, and getting across 178, obviously getting across Ballinger is a critical element. Getting across 35th, 40th. So those are our barriers, is crossing those streets as well as the shoulders and what is a safe enough shoulder that parents are willing to let their students walk down.
Sure.
So we have, we have the right of way at those roads, but the infrastructure, the working with the neighbors, it's a big ask. And so looking at it holistically, but also recognize we don't want to just have little pieces here and there.
Yeah.
Right? We kind of want to make sure routes can be completed and then we can move to the next route. So we know how important that is. Having the sort of the data that you have might help us determine priorities within that. I think we know the schools are a priority, but more detailed information wouldn't hurt at all once you start making those decisions.
You bet. What's interesting about your comment about the 1 mile radius is fascinating because we looked at that under state statute. That's what can be determined as a school walk zone. We made sure we scaled that back to considerably smaller. But those two circles actually are almost 2/3 of Lake Forest Park. So it impacts not only the
Sweet,
children,
create a lot of
it's
sidewalks.
everybody. Yeah. So the holistic approach has got it's absolutely imperative because it is not just for the schools, it's for everybody getting around to be able to go to a business or go to a friend's house or to go, and I think that we also too, I want to say this very clearly, Briarcrest neighborhood, although we have not a huge amount of square footage, so to speak, in terms of the city's area, we feel a very strong responsibility to contributing to making that safer. And it's a really challenging area. And we look forward to working with Shoreline in that because they have some traffic calming that is kind of aging and we'd like to contribute to making that happen. Because sadly, that's where we had a pedestrian fatality a number of years ago. And it should never happen. And we hope that never happens again. Colleagues, other thoughts?
Well, I will say, we don't want to forget Briarcrest. We are looking at those routes as well. The challenge is that our boundary is before the school, so continuing those routes from there to the school would be sort of working with the city of Shoreline as well. So that's a partnership that hasn't quite gelled yet for that. Been focusing on the ones that are more internal to our community, but we recognize there's definitely a need for those children out there as well.
If that would create sidewalks to nowhere. Another consideration that isn't physically within the city of Lake Forest Park, but serves students from Lake Forest Park is the road in front of Kellogg and Shorecrest.
Sure.
And some calming measures on that road would be welcomed and helpful. As a parent of children at each of those schools and actively on that road a lot. And a lot of our Briarcrest families walk that road too. And that road is a pretty significant thoroughfare with a lot of student drivers, but also a lot of parents who are in a hurry to get places. And then people use it as a cut through if they're trying to get from 145th to other places. So I don't know how that works collaboration wise. I don't know enough about
Sure.
Different city jurisdictions in that way, but it's a thought to consider if that works.
Absolutely. I mean, we have shared success, and whether, geography is and boundaries of the cities don't really matter. It's a question of trying to coordinate how, and there can be joint applications for grants for those programs. So which would be great. I just was in another community where they actually had on a state highway, they had speed humps because they had 2 elementary schools spaced out over like 6 miles. And I thought that was fascinating. There has been a resistance in the past to put speed humps on various roads, but it was very effective for those schools. There's no 2 ways about it. And emergency vehicles, they were pillows, so the emergency vehicles could just straddle them, not be slowed down one bit. And interestingly enough, there's a fire station right in the middle between the 2 elementary schools. So I think there are lots of opportunities here. I think that the coordination it takes more time, but it's absolutely doable. One other thing I was going to say too, which is on a fun level about this, is that we've been talking about this for a long time. When we talk about our parks recreation, our pros plan and trail, last part is trails. So I don't worry about the acronym. But trails, the connections between Shoreline and Lake Forest Park and our neighborhoods because of the topography. There are lots of undeveloped right of ways that could be developed into trails. Some of them have ad hoc trails already. But for very low cost to allow, so people don't have to walk their way around winding roads, which may not have sidewalks. Shorter route may be an undeveloped right of way. There certainly are from Briarcrest down into Lake Forest Park, 35th, 38th. There's a variety of different places. And I just walked a couple of weeks ago from 25th down to into Lake Forest Park. I didn't realize there was an actual little path in through the trees there. I'd never been there before, going all the way down to 28th. And you can wend your way through there. That needs to be formalized and celebrated so people can actually know where it is. So apparently some of the residents use it, but I'm not sure that other folks are aware that those are there. Colleagues, other.
And I realize I offered an opinion, but you know much more, you are much more directly connected with reports and issues around traffic safety with our schools. So if there's thoughts, right?
Yeah, no, I think the conversation that I heard about since I joined Shoreline school district is really around sidewalks. And I think the efforts in that direction are really great. And I know that that's both the city of Shoreline's, side of it, but also Lake Forest, right? Because everywhere you drive down in beautiful neighborhoods, but sidewalks are not. I mean, I know a lot of families really enjoy having their children walk to school when they live really close by.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know too, I have friends that live in, my daughter's friends that live just inside of Shoreline, up at the top of 178. And they don't like to walk on 178 because of challenges and speed sometimes. So we're all a shared success here. And I also believe that 25th needs additional pedestrian amenities too. So that can be a very dangerous road. People cut through from North City, they drive down. I think there are lots of opportunities, and I think that on the trail side, the Parks Board can continue to examine some of those things. We have some local residents that are very passionate about the different trails. I finally just walked a trail from, somebody asked me, is it possible to walk to Horizon View Park from 5 Acre Woods directly? And somebody was lamenting there's no way to do that. And I found there's actually a way to do that through a right of way and an undeveloped section of road. It's not easy, but you can get there. And the nice thing is it means that if somebody's coming down or up, they don't have to go another half mile down a very wide set of roads. So there are these places, and I think from in the conjunction with Shoreline, the Briarcrest neighborhood and that area, which all flow, pedestrian wise flows down towards 178 Brookside and all those different areas. I think that there's huge opportunities there. It's going to take some time, and to be fair, Shoreline is more suited financially to do some of the projects on their side. We have a fraction even with what we're receiving right now. So
However, I was gonna say, however we can partner on the, and we've been in communication about this before,
You bet.
on safe routes to school.
sure.
Please don't hesitate to reach out.
I was gonna ask, is Safe Routes to School a federal program?
I think state.
or-
It's state,
Okay,
but some of the money comes through. the
yeah,
federal.
so I wondered how
So-
stable that funding source.
There are other buckets of money that come from the state that, and it's gonna be a challenge, and there may be some hiccups here for a period of time. We all are recognizing the challenges. We're in the position right now, fortunately, that none of our projects are yet directly impacted by federal cuts, but it will happen, I'm certain. So I think the other thing is too, as the two bodies and our friends at Shoreline City Hall too can continue to advocate at the state level to make sure that the state is figuring out ways to contribute, not just to continue building new big roads, but to continue to figure out ways to encourage safer speeds, pedestrian road diets, pedestrian access, and multimodal access. So we're having real challenges right now. We had a recent meeting with WashDOT about 104, and they said we don't have a dime to spend on it. And we're faced with
They did put up those rough road signs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their excuse and they're sticking to it apparently. Not to make life, it's scary because we have cyclists riding up and down the road. Some of the potholes are now 3 or 4 inches deep and there may be a situation at some point, the city has to approach it in a different manner. So that's, I think it's really essential. One of the things that as a sad byproduct of that may happen is they indicated WashDOT now may be amenable to lowering the speed limit on Ballinger Way because of the speeds accelerate the deterioration of the already deteriorated pavement. I know it's a pain for everybody to slow down, but it's also imperative. I mean, we had over 827, I think it was, fatalities in Washington State last year, record since the highest number since 1980. Was. So people are, what you see on the
Car
road,
fatalities.
yeah, including pedestrians. When you're seeing, and most of those are vulnerable users, they're either pedestrians or multimodal cyclists and bikes. It's really scary. Yeah, I'm sorry, Larry, please.
Yeah, so I know in the past, LFP has been unsuccessful in getting the Safe Routes to School money. I'm thinking maybe a 3-way partnership between LFP, Shoreline Schools, and the city of Shoreline. If we're focusing the Briarcrest area, including 25th, which would hit Briarcrest, Kellogg, Shorecrest, Hamlin Park. I feel like that would be a more competitive application, so I would like to see a 3-way partnership.
Yeah, I believe Shoreline hasn't had a lot of success with that grant either, so maybe.
Yeah,
And whenever I talk with colleagues at the state level, I serve on a statewide committee of school directors. They're always like, well, there's tons of money in that account. And I'm like, well, then please grant it. We're ready to use it.
I would say that from Lake Forest Park's past up until very recently, the efforts that were expended towards the Safe Routes to School project have been very lacking. There was one success at Brookside, and that was completed in 2013. No, it was later than 2017. No, inflating the times, but after that project, there was nothing really in the pipeline, and there weren't resources from an engineering standpoint to get it to a 10% design to do the application. And I think that is something that our colleagues here have been talking about, leveraging what we have in limited resources and getting it to that place to be competitive from a grant standpoint. To Councilman Bowman's point, a trifecta of groups, Shoreline City Council, Lake Forest Park City Council, and the school board would be, I think would be very helpful.
Someone who's more familiar with that program than I is on the same committee. We're meeting tomorrow, so I will pick her brain about knowledge around 3-way partnerships like that, because I think any way to strengthen that, and you're exactly right, like that's in shared interest, and I think that'd be an outstanding application.
Yeah. Councilor Reynolds.
And I want to clarify that we call them sidewalks as kind of this overarching, but in order for our money to go further, sometimes these are going to be like curb separated shoulders and things like that, because true sidewalks are a lot of cost and the infrastructure built into it. So setting expectations, we kind of use the term sidewalks as a holistic, anything that gives a protected shoulder, but we're probably gonna see more protected shoulders than true sidewalks in this community, simply so we can make our dollars go further and extend those pathways, the safe pathways a little farther than we would otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so to be clear.
And if we're able to help assist with some data, our data can also be disaggregated to understand which families are experiencing low income, or maybe experiencing homelessness, and so that may be a factor that can assist in prioritization for decision making.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we've kind of wind our way around school cameras and sidewalks and safe routes to school. Other needs for the schools specifically, not just, I mean, of course, not just schools that are in our community. How can we help? So you mentioned 25th. I think 25th is that's right. That's right in front of Shorecrest. Okay, Shorecrest and Kellogg. I always think of Kellogg as Ballinger. But that it was it called before John that they converted Kellogg? Was it Cordell? Not Cordell Hall. Morgan. Thank you. There are ways for us too, for the approaches to that, you know, I think that 178th, where the intersection of Shoreline and Lake Forest Park there, 178th and 25th, and I guess it's kind of an odd intersection.
I drive it daily.
Yeah,
That's my.
it's a
intersection.
very,
That's my-
it's a very challenging intersection, because if you're coming down the hill, you can see up the hill, but if you're coming from the north ostensibly to try to get up in that offset intersection, you can't see around the corner. I think that there needs to be some additional traffic calming in that area, and for the safety of everybody, and I think everybody needs to feel safe being able to walk around that area, particularly because North City has amenities that people want to get to, and there's sidewalks in a lot of places. Other thoughts on any of these things? Few more minutes.
Is that just on topic A here, and we're gonna talk about?
Yes,
separately?
yeah, we can certainly move on to that if you guys are. Yeah, let's move on to item B if you're all amenable.
Actually, I do have one thought.
Yep, you bet.
Second level of priority, I would say, is where bus stops are. I happen to just experience this personally because our house happens to be the bus stop.
Oh, okay.
And for all the buses, including snow routes, like we really aced it in the house purchase. It's like you have like one of the anchor stops,
Put on your slippers.
but it's on 25th.
Okay,
But it's in that it's not on 25th up towards the schools, it's on 25th over towards Perkins.
all right, okay.
And people just come, it's one of the roads people use as a cut through. People come screaming through that. So if there's like, okay, we can't quite do this, but we have a little bit, we could do something. I would say like the next tier is bus stops, because those are kids who are still walking to something that's getting them to school. They're just not walking all the way to school. And there's definitely many bus stops that are on some pretty speedy roads.
Right, makes sense.
Do
We have-
those bus stops frequently change as you look at your demographic, or are they somewhat set?
They're generally set, but they do change every once in a while. But for the most part, I think they stay pretty stable yearly.
Okay.
There might be tweaks, but
And our transportation department could provide a map.
yes, for sure.
Well, that intersection unintended between Shoreline and Lake Forest Park is right there.
Yep.
We also have an intersection with Briar and Lake Forest Park on the other side of the community, and we've been successful in getting speed limits lowered there, which is essential for bus stops. So, and for pedestrians and everybody moving around. So I think that that's another place where, as we discuss things with the Shoreline City Council, we did, you may remember that a number of years ago, gosh, it's probably been 4 years ago, when Shoreline was considering various places to lower speed limits from 35 to 30, they were considering 35th, and they pulled it off the list. And myself and the mayor and the deputy mayor at the time wrote a letter to Shoreline City Council saying, hey, please put it back on the list, because everything from that area flows down to us and it sets the tone. And our friends at Shoreline were so gracious to reconsider it, and they did lower the speed limit to 30. So it really helps, and that collaboration can continue. Item B, let's talk about youth and family support services. Over to your current youth family support services staffing from both agencies, the possible areas of collaboration.
I know that the superintendent and I discussed what we could share from our side.
Please.
And Superintendent Reyes, do you want to share a bit?
So, we wanted to just provide a very high level overview of some of the supports that we have in place in our schools across the district. One of the key positions that provide really wonderful support for our students and our families really directly are our family advocates. You may have heard about.
Use that. Sure.
Yeah, in this position, every school has a family advocate. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, the position was reduced to a half-time position at each school. And so, but it's a really meaningful position. They connect directly with our families who may have the highest needs. They support a lot of efforts related to understanding the school system. You know, our school system, you know, basically in our country, when we have a lot of new families that couldn't join us. So they support a lot of like the paperwork and filling out forms for different for different reasons, you know, whether it's an enrollment form or a form to access possible pretty reduced meal services. They also throughout the entire year, there's activities that they coordinate in partnership and collaboration with their colleagues in the schools and our leaders in each of our schools. All of our schools are deeply engaged in supporting efforts connected to families. And so there's some really wonderful events that take place throughout the year. Some of you may have attended some of those at our various schools. And I think, I mean, those are the things that come to mind when I think about our teams in our schools as it relates to family advocate positions, but they're really a critical part of our school community in our system. We have school nurses at every school, full-time nurse at every school. And that is a highly valued position because we know that there are students in our schools that need medical support that sometimes a nurse is the most equipped to support them with, right? So we feel really fortunate with that. School nurses, nurse hours were part of the consideration for reduction 2 years ago, and efforts on the part of our employee labor partners really helped retain the same level of service over the last couple of years. But again, you know, funding constraints continue to have us always sort of in the thought of, oh, we don't want to lose critical positions like this, right? And so we're really grateful that we still do have them. We have drug and alcohol counselors in all of our schools currently. Unfortunately, we did have to present to the board a recommendation of various positions that we're going to need to reduce because of our funding situation, and the drug and alcohol counselors were part of that. And so obviously we'll continue to support our students. We continue to partner with various community organizations, and of course we have school counselors at every school. But it is a service that a lot of our students have expressed concerns about, as well as our staff. But we're in a situation where it's one of those decisions that we essentially we're forced to make because we have to also maintain a fiscally sound, to whatever extent we can, budget plan. We have before and after school programs. The YMCA rents spaces at every one of our elementary schools and provides before and after care. We also have services from the city of Shoreline and our middle school. Where they come in and they provide different kinds of activities for students, and it's referred to as hang time.
Yeah, way back.
And I don't know if
LP helps fund
LP
some.
helps with that, right? And so I know that students really enjoy that, because it's really a time for them to just relax after school, be with their friends, engage in an activity if they want to, a number of different choices. I walk through those often, and it's really a wonderful gift, I think, for us on the part of the two cities. And of course, we have a number of different extracurricular activities that include clubs and sports and music and drama, all of that, which all of you are probably very familiar with, having attended our schools, some of you anyway. We have a really robust sort of organization as it relates to our PTAs, and they provide a lot of supports. And over the last few years, there has been some real focus on mental health and well-being of our students. But we also recently adopted our new strategic plan that includes a goal to ensure that all of our students feel welcome, safe, well, happy, joyful in their school environment. And so we're working to develop mechanisms to ensure that we have supports in place to move that work forward. We know that coming out of COVID and really even our budget situation has an impact on our students' sense of like, are we okay? You know, they worry about how we're doing as a district. And so that's a focus area for us. It's sort of connected a little bit to what we refer to as multi-tiered systems of support, which is a research-based framework that includes different tiered interventions that can be utilized to support students in both academic and social areas. That is in development. We have a team, a district team that is working to get that underway, but it's quite complicated and it's quite heavy lift. But it is also part of the actions that are embedded in our strategic plan. We serve children who are experiencing homelessness, and you may know the program that Kenny mentioned, which is a program that is funded but not completely fully as it should be. And provides funding and supports for us to ensure that services to students who are and families who are experiencing either irregular housing or homelessness where they really don't have a place to live. To ensure that we're connecting them with services, community services, we ensure that they obviously qualify for free breakfast or lunch. And we have a team that ensures that the requirements under that program are implemented throughout our schools. I don't have the data on the number of percentage of students that might be experiencing, but we do have, as we all know, people are facing a lot of struggles right now with given inflation and our last year we're really proud that we established what is called the Title VI program. And for that one, I'm going to make sure that I provide you accurate information. It's a native education program for students who are part of our Native American communities. And we have our team from Briar Press, ADJOURN, who's leading that effort. And
Who is also Indigenous.
yes. And this program is, it took us a little while to implement because it's really important that as we develop it, that it's meaningful to our families and that we're engaging our families in a way that meets their needs and in a way that really makes sense for what they want to see in a program like this. And so this year they got off the ground last year, but this year they've held cultural evening dates. They have provided and are providing mentoring, tutoring, and meeting regularly. And it's been really a wonderful way to develop community for our families who have for many years not been really truly treated in the way they should be. And so we're really grateful for that in our schools now, and more centrally, by the team that meets regularly, but not at every single school, but they meet as a group. So that is a program, and then we have staff in our district who share with us their interest to be what they have a title, equity leaders. You know that equity, anti-racist education, anti-racist instruction is really a core value in our system. And we have staff who work to learn and grow in that area, who then work with and support that growth in our schools for our staff and our students. So those are some high level parts of kind of our system as it relates to supports for our students and our families that we're really proud of.
It's wonderful. I think, colleagues, we have about 3 or 4 more minutes before we have to move upstairs, but I apologize. I wish we had 90 minutes at least to chat. But we can bookmark this for a continuing conversation. Deputy Mayor Furtone.
And yeah, Superintendent Reyes, thanks for your comments, and wanted to first compliment you on bringing students literally to the meeting. Basically, I think, when I was, I went to LA City Schools, and we just thought teachers went back into boxes and the superintendent was somebody far off. So I love the fact that you're bringing it back down to the level of students and the families really. And I love your concerns and one of the, I would love to know the number of students and families who are experiencing homelessness that you're encountering. Because I always wonder whether we're allocating enough resources on our part to support what you do. So it'd be really great to know that number. So thank you very much for thinking about that. Also, I'm also concerned about the Title VI programs and especially with the equity leads about what the federal government and the Department of Education policies are going to be doing to that. So, you know, if you have an update some point of basically how we can support you to basically essentially keep those services going, that would be a wonderful thing to know. So,
You know, we're really following the direction and guidance of the state superintendent of public instruction on this. But as we know, there's different things every day, and so we're keeping a close eye on that. And thank you for asking to be connected to that, and I'm happy to forward information as I receive it.
Be great.
I can just want to also just thank you, Councilmember Hurtado, for also speaking to potential partnerships for some of these human services. And we do see in districts, you know, across the state that as education funding is dwindling at the state level, that some of these cross-jurisdictional partnerships between cities and school districts are in areas that we kind of share around these human services, mental health and family support, services navigation, those sorts of things that, you know, Dr. Reyes itemized some of the things that the schools do, but the way that some of those services are endangered, that, you know, I think that there's a lot of really interesting work going on in terms of partnerships and, you know, some external grants that can support those and that kind of thing. So I guess just, you know, really appreciate you speaking to that. And, you know, I mean, our schools we really do need to come together to support these students in any way we can.
Yeah, the sad reality is, many of the positions that Director Cohen and Superintendent Reyes are talking about are not funded by the state, we're not fully funded by the state. So we're proud to talk about those full-time nurses. We don't get funding for full-time nurses. And so that's an area that our local community covers with the levies. And or other things like that. And so when the amount of money we're receiving for the total system is being decreased, that's why really hard and horrible choices have to be made to reduce, frankly, the positions that serve those most in need, because that's actually not what's funded, is those most in need. And so I want to second Director Cohen's call for a partnership. We're ready and eager, and I know that you just allocated a bit more funding towards a crisis response partnership with a provider. So that may be a place for further conversation, but I don't want to make you late to your meeting.
Yeah, I think human services could easily spend, you know, considerable amount of time, we should. So let's find some time to do that, and we can share additional things that we're working on. Yes.
Also, be quick, but on that topic, does the school district have any sort of partnership with RACER, the Regional Crisis Response Agency?
I believe so, but I don't have.
I think
that there is a connection.
I think there is. We're founding members of that from, the 5 cities. Brooke does fantastic work there. So
That's another resource if there's families that are experiencing an acute crisis.
And just bring it back to the question about the homelessness numbers. It unhoused people. A number of years ago, I heard an anecdotal number about high school students in Shoreline, that the number was like 70 or 75 kids that were sort of couch surfing unhoused and at the whim of being housed by friends or people that were kind, considerate. That number is something that too is also is very concerning, because there should be plenty of housing for everyone. And my better half is a principal in North Shore School District, and every couple of months she calls and says, who do you know that can help with a family that's about to be evicted or they have a crisis? Councilmember Gabowski, Brooke at RCR, and Celia Soldal, too, formerly of NUSA, have helped out in this regards, and we need to make sure, as we're preaching to choir, of course, that those folks don't fall through the cracks, because once they step over that line into that place, it becomes very difficult for them to come back into a place Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I apologize for the short amount of time, but we will definitely bookmark this for a very.
Good start.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.
Good meeting.